They put in a president of the United States who had no mental capability to do the job and then lied to the American. They lied to you, the press. They lied to you guys time and time again. Oh no, Joe Biden's fine. Everything's okay.
Oh, I can't talk to you. If I do, I'm going to violate all my ethical obligations as a judge. Can I do it anonymously so I can violate my ethical obligations as a judge? Oh, sure. Great. I'm happy to do it. You're biased. You're partisan. You talk to the press. Okay, maybe you can do that, but now you have to reveal yourself so we can get you off of our case. They won't do it because they're acting like little moles who are embedded in the judiciary, executing the coup from inside. Articles of impeachment filed against Judge Jeb James Boasberg out of the District of Columbia. We've covered this judge a lot. You remember, this is what he looks like. Very old photo from 2016. And he was appointed long time ago by Barack Obama. Seeing that right there. And it's been a major thorn in the side of the new Trump administration, issuing nationwide injunctions, ordering planes full of illegal alien terrorist gangbangers to be returned to the country. And now we're seeing that he was also responsible for spying on senators, Republicans in the House, representatives in both bodies. So now we see Representative Brandon Gill has introduced articles of impeachment against the judge. He comes from Texas, just introduced November 4th, referred over to Jim Jordan and the House Committee on the Judiciary, saying it's time for Jeb to be removed. Here's the background. Articles of impeachment filed, joined by many other people. Chip Roy, Randy Fine, Byron Donalds, Lauren Boebert, Anna Paulina Luna, Andy Biggs in the House, Mr. Self, Stuntsman, Crane, Ogles, and Collins, all signing on the document to begin impeachment proceedings for James Boasberg, Chief Judge out of D.C. And this is a good place to start. We have a lot of problematic judges out there, but I think you just need to haul one in front of Congress, and hopefully they'll get the hint and recognize that the Republicans are not just playing tiddlywinks just all day long and actually doing their constitutional duty, which is to oversee the judiciary, making sure they're acting in good behavior and not committing high crimes and misdemeanors. So Congress should be acting on this and checking them. It's their obligation. It's their duty. And if they're not doing it, maybe Judge Boasberg didn't know, then that's pathetic. It should be highly aggressive between the branches. We don't want them making excuses for each other. Go investigate them so that we have proper checks and balances. So here, Congress is getting started. Be it resolved that Boasberg be impeached for high crimes and misdemeanors, not just good behavior. Saying, all right, here it is resolved now in the House that Jeb Boasberg is impeached for high crimes and misdemeanors pursuant to these articles of impeachment that we will now send over to the Senate. So this just got introduced, gonna need to vote on it, and then the Senate would vote on removal. Articles of impeachment exhibited by the House of Representatives is against James Boasberg, who is appointed to serve as the U.S. District Judge. And here is the first count, Article 1, abuse of power. Ignoring his responsibility to wield the power of his office as a judge in a constitutional manner, Chief Judge Boasberg granted special counsel with an asterisk because he's illegitimate, John L. Smith, aka Not a Real Boy Jack, his authorization to issue frivolous non-disclosure orders in furtherance of an FBI investigation project called Arctic Frost. It was created by the FBI, Tim Tebow, Walter Giardina, and others, and then Jack Smith took it and ran with it as a special counsel who was completely illegitimate. These non-disclosure orders covered members of Congress who were acting in accord with their legislative duties and their privileges guaranteed under the Constitution. Article 1, Section 6, Clause 1. Boasberg violated that. Chief Judge Boasberg authorized the issuance of frivolous non-disclosure orders covering at least, that we know of, Marsha Blackburn, Ted Cruz, Lindsey Graham, Bill Hagerty, Josh Hawley, Ron Johnson, Cynthia Loomis, Rick Scott, Dan Sullivan, Tommy Tuberville, and Mike Kelly, a representative. These illegitimate and frivolous non-disclosure orders and subpoenas, they threaten members of Congress by imposing undue legal scrutiny for fulfilling their constitutional duties. And Chief Judge Boasberg, who's supposed to be a neutral judge, he signed an order prohibiting AT&T from informing Senator Cruz of his subpoena for at least 1 year. Chief Judge Boasberg expressed that there were reasonable grounds to believe that such disclosure will result in the destruction of or the tampering with evidence, intimidation of potential witnesses, and serious jeopardy to the investigation. And how can a judge make that conclusion without knowing who the subject of this action is? They just said, well, it's a bad person. Oh, I guess I'll take your word for it. Judge Boasberg knew. He had no clear reasonable basis to make this finding about Cruz, which accused him of being willing to destroy evidence and to intimidate witnesses. How can he even write that without knowing who the person is? In violation of both the law and Senator Cruz's ethical obligations as a member of the bar. He's a lawyer. Lawyers for the Texas bar bar, I'm presuming go through character and fitness, and he's a sitting senator. Now, the code, U.S. law, under 2 U.S. Code, section 6628, it says the office of the Senate Sergeant at Arms, any officer or employee of the office of the SAA, or any provider for a Senate office that is providing services to or being used by the Senate office shall not be barred. So if you're working with the Senate or you have a cell phone through the Senate program, you shall not be barred through operation of any court order or any statutory provision from notifying the Senate office of any legal process seeking the disclosure of Senate data. You cannot not tell us if you're coming after our data. We have a right to know. They wrote it into the U.S. Code. Anything that we do, if we're transmitting, processing, storing data, whatever, electronic systems maintained or operated, whatever, if you want that, you got to let us know you're coming for it. But Chief Judge Boasberg, he does not appreciate the basic statute and contributed to the legal inquiries that violated the law, indicating he can't serve as a chief judge. If he can't even read the law, which says that explicitly, then he's violating the law. It's unclear if Judge Boasberg facilitated the frivolous subpoenas issued by Jack Smith, which covered conservative nonprofit organizations, including but not limited to others. So did Boasberg sign all the other, 400 people who got hit with these? America First, Policy Institute, Women for America, Center for Renewing America. Many of these same organizations had been outspoken in opposition to various Biden policies, and they all got attacked. It appears that these subpoenas were intended to silence political speech. All true. In addition, these frivolous subpoenas also covered activists and patriotic Americans, including Jeffrey Clark, shout out, John Eastman, shout out, Rudy, shout out, Ed Corrigan, who got attacked, Mark Meadows, Cleta Mitchell, Amy Creamer, Kelly Ward, Jenna Ellis, Wesley Denton, and many others got attacked. The weaponization of the judiciary compromises, and a lot of people are missing off this list, by the way. This is not inclusive. There's maybe 100 more. The weaponization of the judiciary compromises the separation of compromises. If you weaponize your position like Boasberg did, the separation of powers in the Constitution, and Boasberg's impropriety in participating in the undue investigation of members of Congress casts doubt on his ability to execute his office with good behavior. Wherefore, Boasberg is guilty of high crimes and misdemeanors and should be removed from his office immediately. We're happy to see those come through, and we'd like to see a little bit more fleshing out on the high crime and misdemeanor, what that is explicitly. But yeah, violating the provision of the code, pretty good indicator that that's happening. So that got introduced. We see Byron Donald saying, I proudly stand with Representative Brandon Gill in impeaching this radical activist judge. He abused his power by weaponizing the judiciary. He's committed high crimes and misdemeanors. He's unfit for office, and he should be impeached. Read the articles below. We already did, Byron. Thank you. He's also, we got this from Ted Cruz, says, thank you, Brandon Gill. He's in the Senate, so he can't do this, for filing these articles. He signed off on secret subpoena for cell phone records of at least 9 Republicans, including me. Impeach this judge. From Cruz. Byron, a little bit more from him on his position here.
Which should be protected, but the Democrats didn't want that. They wanted everybody to move on. They wanted no examination of it. They wanted no ability to question it. And let's take a further step back. And what did they do with the results of the 2020 election? They put in a president of the United States who had no mental capability to do the job, and then lied to the American. They lied to you, the press. They lied to you guys time and time again. Oh no, Joe Biden's fine. Everything's okay. You didn't see the man for 6 months, 8 months, 10 months. He wasn't holding cabinet meetings. He would come out, have 3 cards, and when he was done, they would usher him back off stage. It is one of the greatest affronts to our constitutional republic, a chief executive who was put into place who did not have the capabilities to do his job. You guys in the press watched it. We watched it here on Capitol Hill. But you want to talk about 2025? There were irregularities. President Trump was well within his rights to question that. And he did, obviously. But that doesn't warrant a massive investigation. That does not warrant Jack Smith, a rogue prosecutor who, by the way, this is not the first time Jack Smith has done something like this. Go talk to former Governor Bob McDonnell of Virginia. Because he did it to Bob McDonnell too.
That's right.
And they turned that guy loose. Judge Boasberg was a part of it. Why? To go after their political rivals. Now, 5 years later, to protect the ineptitude and the radicalism of Joe Biden's presidency. We don't even know if he was mentally with us the last 2 years. We don't know. You have his wife's right hand, Anthony Bernal, pleading the fifth in House depositions. You have his doctor pleading the fifth in House depositions. I was present for both of those. He's pleading the fifth. Does not want to answer the American people to the mental capabilities of President Biden. But when this issue comes up about the weaponization, which did occur, of the Department of Justice, going after their political rivals for the purposes of trying to win elections and maintain power, that's your story. Not whether President Trump challenged the results of the 2020 election, which, to be blunt, he had every right to do, and there were major irregularities in that election.
Nicely done, Byron Donalds, explaining the president was lawfully within his prerogative to question things as he did, and they attacked him for that in the aftermath. And so here you can see we've got more. The judges are out of control, and we covered this case some time ago, but we're happy to see Congress now stepping up. But today, Grassley and Jordan sent a letter over to the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Honorable John Roberts, getting a letter courtesy of Chuck Grassley in the Senate and Jim Jordan in the House, both of them running the judiciary committees. And they say, hey, Chief Justice Roberts of the Supreme Court, you got a big problem here. We write to you in your capacity as the presiding officer of the Judicial Conference and the Chief Justice of the United States. If you remember, and we talked about this, on October 11th, the New York Times came out with a stupid article, and we read it, called Federal Judges Warning of Judicial Crisis, Fault the Supreme Court and Their Emergency Orders. Okay, so federal judges talking to the press, talking garbage against the Supreme Court. Completely unbelievable, but they did it. The article reports that they said dozens of sitting federal judges, shared with the Times their concerns about risks to the court's legitimacy as the Supreme Court is releasing opaque orders about the Trump administration policies. Completely ridiculous for the judges to be talking out of turn. According to the reporting, the Times, the media, they contacted more than 400 of the almost 1,500 judges, and they asked them to respond to a questionnaire. Can you moron judges just fill out this form? Bunch of them like, yeah, sure, about the use of the emergency docket by the Supreme Court. Then the Times specifically included all the judges from districts that have handled at least one legal challenge in a major piece about Mr. Trump's agenda. Of the 400 judges that the Times contacted, 65 of them responded to the survey, and 47 of the responses indicated that the Supreme Court had been mishandling its emergency docket since Trump came back. Okay, all 45 of those 65, they should all be impeached. In my interviews, the Times said, in interviews, federal judges called the Supreme Court's emergency orders mystical, overly blunt. Someone said incredibly demoralizing and troubling. All talking like cowards who won't even reveal their names. They've all handled Trump cases. They're all coming out and explaining how biased and partisan they actually are, and they're all hiding under cover because they're cowards who are living in the gutter. They said this is a slap in the face to the district courts. One judge whined. One judge compared their district's current relationship with the Supreme Court to a war zone. Another said the courts were in the midst of a judicial crisis, and judges and lawyers have a duty of, candor to the court, and you have, to follow protocol, and they're not doing that. They're talking to the press about their own decisions and their disagreement with the Supreme Court. They can write it in an opinion and the Supreme Court can respond to it, but they're talking to the media because they want to create a counter narrative to the Supreme Court, which is their boss. It's really reprehensible. The Times explained that the judges responded to the questionnaire and spoke in interviews on condition of anonymity because they're cowards. So all of them. So they could share their views candidly, as lower court judges are governed by a complex set of rules. Yeah. And it includes specific limitations on their public statements. So this shows their complicity in violating rules that they know exist. Oh, I can't talk to you. If I do, I'm going to violate all my ethical obligations as a judge. Can I do it anonymously so I can violate my ethical obligations as a judge? Oh, sure. Great. I'm happy to do it. The Times went on to characterize these responses and interviews as overwhelmingly critical of the Supreme Court and reflective of extraordinary tensions within the judiciary. Man, federal judges have made other recent public and anonymous statements to the press criticizing the Supreme Court. In fact, on September 4th, NBC News published an article entitled, "In Rare Interviews, Federal Judges Criticize the Supreme Court's Handling of the Trump Cases." The reporting says that 12 federal judges, who we called out, gave anonymous interviews, and 10 of them said that the Supreme Court needs to explain its rulings better. Okay, it should be impeached and fired immediately. One judge reportedly described the Supreme Court's conduct as inexcusable. 4 of them said that you, John Roberts, should do more to defend the courts. And one said the Supreme Court is effectively assisting the Trump administration in undermining the lower courts. You cannot believe that any of these people are going to be fair and impartial or run according to the rules set by the Supreme Supreme Court follow the precedent, they are no longer qualified to be judges because they know that there are rules that prevent them from talking about this and they're doing it anyways. Very bad behavior. The Supreme Court should investigate who these people were and sanction them. As the chairman of the committees on the judiciary in the United States, Senate, and House, we preside over the congressional committees with legislative oversight and jurisdiction over the federal courts. And we are deeply concerned that these public attacks on the court from sitting federal judges damages public faith and confidence in our judicial system. When judges call into question the legitimacy of their own branch of government, they erode faith in the institution itself. We're also concerned that the conduct of these judges, as reported, may violate their ethical rules. Canon 1 of the Code of Conduct for these hack judges states that they should follow this. A judge should uphold the integrity and the independence of the judiciary, and a judge should act at all times in a manner that promotes public confidence in the integrity and the impartiality of the judiciary, okay? Judicial Code of Conduct says you can't get out there and talk garbage about the courts because the court's power relies on our integrity and our legitimacy and our credibility. Do you agree? Yeah. You swear an oath? Yeah. Great. You can be a judge. And another canon says a judge should not make public comment on the merits of a matter pending or impending in any court. And what's also so scandalous about this is these cowardly judges won't even reveal themselves. So the Trump administration could notice them and say, oh, you have to disqualify you. Okay. You're obviously out there talking crap to the media, saying the Supreme Court's biased and more. So you can't hear this case where the Trump administration is a party. You're biased. You're partisan. You talk to the press. Okay. Maybe you can do that, but now you have to reveal yourself so we can get you off of our case. They won't do it because they're acting like little moles who are embedded in the judiciary, executing the coup from inside. Chief Judge Diaz of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit considered these canons. We covered this. There was another judge called Michael Ponzer, okay? He at least wrote a public article. He wrote an essay. He said, a federal judge wonders, he was a sitting judge, how could Alito have been so foolish? Writes an article. At least he put his name on it, not a coward like the rest of them. He was in trouble. They said, you can't talk crap about Judge Alito in a New York Times piece, Michael. The judge concluded that his statements expressed personal opinions on controversial public issues, criticized the ethics of a sitting Supreme Court justice. It violated the Code of Conduct. You can't do that. He also concluded that it would be reasonable for a member of the public to perceive the essay as commentary on partisan issues as a call for Alito's recusal, also in violation of the canons. Now, the reasoning in that prior ruling in resolving the 2024 complaint appears to apply to these same statements from these anonymous judges. Anonymous public comments from sitting judges describing the relationship as a war zone, accusing SCOTUS of undermining the lower courts, or otherwise impugning the legitimacy of the Supreme Court rulings violates the Code of Conduct, violates judicial canon. Additionally, because of the timing of these comments and the substantial coverage around this litigation involving the Trump administration, it would be very reasonable for a member of the public to view these statements as commenting on partisan issues and ongoing litigation, which they all were. So, John Roberts, listen, in light of these concerns, we urge you to consider the appropriateness of these public yet anonymous comments and whether they breach the ethical obligations of federal judges. While we do not know the full extent of the comments or who the judges are because they're cowards, we remain convinced that judges should not be going to the press to undermine and denigrate the Supreme Court and hide their partisan bias when the Trump cases appear in their courts. Additionally, to provide us with information, John, it'd be helpful if you did this. Does the Judicial Conference agree that making anonymous public comments to the press undermines public confidence? And has the Judicial Conference or any other branch authority cautioned or informed judges about that? Has guidance been provided to the federal judiciary about the conduct of these judges? If not, does the judicial branch want to give some guidance about anonymous messages to the media? And does the judicial branch plan to investigate or address this in any way? If so, when and how? Thank you for your attention to this matter. Signed by Chuck Grassley and Jim Jordan. And of course, we'll see what John Roberts does. He may not do anything, just put this in the shredder with the rest of them. But this is pathetic. These judges should be ashamed of themselves. I think they are ashamed of themselves, which is why they hide in the gutter and lob attacks in violation of their judicial canons. If they're going to violate these judicial canons, what else are they violating? We know already, all of them. And they don't have the stones to come out and write an article like Michael Posner did. At least he would do that. Instead, they'll just slam their own bosses from the sidelines because they're too dense to actually address it in their opinions. under attack. Remember, one of the judges said, the Supreme Court doesn't have our back. I'm like, oh gosh, which one is that? Which one of the judges is saying that? They're all babies and they're cowards to boot, and they know it. So here is Grassley, who is talking about his investigation. He just sent a letter over to John Roberts. He sent a letter to Verizon. Here's what he had to say about all this on with Newsmax.
Now we know it was a fishing expedition to go after Republican organizations, people connected to Republicans, people that are conservative. Even Charlie Kirk's organization, TPUSA, was involved with this. So it was very much a fishing expedition, and I think that they spreading a wide net because they were looking for anything they could to hook on Trump, put Trump in prison, keep him from running for president, and things of that nature. But Jack Frost subpoenaed all this stuff, and thank God the whistleblowers told us about it, gave us the documents, and that's why your name came out.
All right, so Chuck Grassley is out there. Jack Frost, Jack Smith, same difference. We all know what a scumbag is. So Congress now moving forward, articles of impeachment filed, letters to John Roberts sent saying, John, get control of your maniac judges, okay? They're talking to the press like cowardly, pathetic Democrats, and you need to get control of your House. So we'll keep our eye on this one, my friends, and encourage it along. We need accountability in the judiciary because they're in the middle of a judicial coup, and it cannot be allowed to happen.